ようこそどうぞはじめまして
Hello everyone, welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. And you know, while we may be the best, I was thinking, maybe there is a way we can take things to the next level. Word on the street is Crunchyroll's for sale, and hear me out on this, guys. What if we bought Crunchyroll?
I mean, I think I've got a couple of $1 billion down the back of my sofa or something. So let me check.
I mean, we have a fantastically successful podcast, so money's not the issue.
Yeah, we'll just spend some of that GLORIO Heroes money that we got from that high dive deal. That'll bankroll. I
just
think.
Go on Kickstarter and.
What about our successful foray into gacha gaming? I'm sure we made a lot of money on that.
Oh yes, go roll the GLORIO gacha, folks. But all I can say is my first act as president of Crunchyroll would be to cancel this season, and then step 2, regain the license for Nichijou, and I'll retire. So that's my plan.
When are you funding Shield Hero Season 2?
I'll be gone by then.
Take your golden parachute.
Yes,
get out of
as
here.
As any good CEO would do, you'd stick around for like a year and then bail out. Get your
multi-million-dollar severance package
for a huge bonus,
and then bounce around. Maybe we'll go work for Funimation next or something. But yeah. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit here. But before we get into that and our other regular anime discussion, let me just introduce everybody. I'm Jel, and I'm joined as always by Iro.
I'm still here. Not dead yet.
Still here. I'm joined by G.
What's good, everyone?
And this week we have Zig.
Hello. Also not dead yet.
Yes. Thankfully we are all still alive in here. But,
it's not a given these days, it has to be said.
Yes, that is not as an easy question as it should be these days. But yeah, so we are knee-deep halfway into the summer season here.
Yes, we're wading through it like some sort of repulsive muck.
There's a few bright spots still left, I think, but for the most part, it's not been great as predicted, I suppose. But
I feel like the difference though is that normally we predict a season will not be great, and then there's like a couple of things which really surprise us, and I feel like there's maybe one thing which has surprised us this time round, but aside from that, it's been a little barren.
I think there's still a couple if we're allowed to or if we're allowed to hook some of these Netflix shows into the umbrella of summer season. But
Anyway, we'll get into the shows we've been covering. I mean, we're still watching things, although admittedly a lot of these I would not still be watching in other seasons. Either way, though, we'll have some things to say. But before we get into that, I wanted to cover a couple of notable anime business news items that happened over the past 2 weeks since the last episode, or actually probably in the past week. The first one I mentioned, Crunchyroll, is not a joke, is actually getting shopped around by AT&T, who I believe owns the company that owns Crunchyroll or something like that. Which is interesting because they're apparently, and a lot of this is just off the record talk, I suppose, but apparently they made an offer to Sony, who, if everyone recalls, also purchased Funimation a couple years ago. So that apparently is not happening. Sony did not like their offer at all, but we came close to reuniting Crunchyroll and Funimation again, I guess. But I guess that's not happening. I do have to wonder if Crunchyroll did have on August 1st, they dumped a whole lot of titles that are licensed by Sentai. They dumped almost 80 titles off their catalog August 1st out of nowhere with like 3 days notice.
Some fairly high profile stuff too.
Yeah. So like I so if everybody recalls, a couple years ago, Crunchyroll and Funimation hooked up, and then they had a bad breakup, and Crunchyroll moved on to High Dive as their sort of rebound fling. And
Friendship ended with Funimation. Now High Dive is my best friend.
Yeah, and High Dive, of course, being owned by Sentai, and apparently that, I haven't seen any official announcements, but that doesn't seem to be going well either.
According to somebody I know who actually has a Verb subscription, they still can watch both High Dive and Crunchyroll shows on Verb.
Well, something's working out there, I guess.
Yeah, so yeah, and I think that gets complicated because then Verve is like owned by Elation, who owns Crunchyroll, but it's not necessarily the same company. All that, but anyway, point is there's some stuff going on, some shuffling going on. It'll be interesting to see who, if anyone, buys Crunchyroll, as AT&T is reportedly asking at least $1 billion. They had asked $1.5 billion of Sony, which is the offer they declined. So
just run FGO for another year, and that pays it for itself.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting if you want to measure where Crunchyroll and Funimation are at or were at over the past couple years. Sony bought Funimation for $143 million.
Huh.
Which is like pocket change compared to 1.5
Well,
billion.
I do think that is interesting that AT&T because I think it is interesting that so first of all that they want to get rid of Crunchyroll, because I guess my understanding is that Crunchyroll's doing all right the last few years, right? I mean,
right. It's not, so it's actually because Crunchyroll is doing well, not because they're in trouble.
Right. So
and AT&T is not doing well, so they're looking to make some money by
selling. But then I also find it interesting
assets.
that they would value it at that much.
Yeah, I can't imagine a universe where that valuation makes any sort of sense.
I think they were saying each user in Crunchyroll's worth $500.
Well, so let me break down some of those numbers because
how much is subscription for how long? What?
Yeah, so it's not just that, but that was Sony's reply because they're playing hardball.
Of course,
the real answer is somewhere in between, right? Because they were basing that number off of if Crunchyroll has 3 million paid subscribers, and you times it by 500, that gets you 1.5 billion. But in addition to that's not Crunchyroll's only form of revenue stream, right?
No.
So they have a lot more people that watch with ads. You can watch Crunchyroll free with ads, and you don't get to watch. You can't watch the latest episode. But if you wait a week, you can watch anything on Crunchyroll with ads. So they get money off of that. I can't imagine that's more than the subscriber base, but probably
I'm sure it's not nothing.
Similar. I'm sure it's close to I can only speculate. I have no idea what their ad model looks like or anything, but it's definitely something, right? And they have their stores and their game initiatives and stuff like that. So there's a lot more value to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say this may even relate to the second news bit we're talking about this week. To be honest, the kind of person who wants to stream anime for free, well, let's be real though, there was, at least until recently, another place they probably would have gone instead, right?
Yes.
We'll talk about that in a second, I think. But I'll also point out that Crunchyroll has some interest in certain productions, which means presumably they have profit sharing from those productions, stuff like Shield Hero, etc. So I would assume that
the big webtoon stuff that's happening right now.
Yeah, but I would assume that is a small but perhaps notable source of income, and something which over the last few years we've seen them expand quite considerably in terms of actually becoming involved on production committees and getting their name in the credits of actual shows.
Right. And when you perform a valuation of how much a company is worth, you're not just counting how much they have currently as assets, but how much you think they can make.
Yeah, future
to
growth
a certain
potential.
Degree. So does that mean Crunchyroll's worth $1 billion? I don't have the numbers to say that for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Do we have an actual number of subscribers for Crunchy? Is that public?
Yeah, it was 3 million are the paid subscribers.
See, that's more than I would have thought. Actually,
As of July. As of July, they're at 3 million paid subscribers at, I think it's $8 a month, I think is the current price.
I mean, also, like, I hate to be the bearer of our grim digital future, but, like, those subscribers themselves have value. Like, you have a captive audience of 8 million people you can serve things to.
Right, Crunchyroll runs ads on the website, the banner ads, those kind of things.
But also just in terms of information harvesting as well, you know.
Right, yeah. So there's a lot more value than just the $8 that you get from those 3 million people. Well,
I guess the thing I'm curious about now then is if Sony's not willing to play ball, do you think AT&T is committed to getting rid of Crunchyroll? In that case, who is the potential buyer in this scenario?
I'll point out as well that like AT&T, I don't think will be fully committed. There was talk that they wanted to divest the Warner Brothers Games division as well recently. And that didn't go anywhere in the end. And that was like a projected multi-billion-dollar sale that they just gave up on, apparently. So.
Yeah, for all we know, maybe they just keep hold. I mean, they can't find a good buyer. Yeah, they might just hang on to them. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's a better situation to be chained to. I don't know, not a sinking ship, but what potentially could be construed as such. But
I don't think like the health of the conglomerate is necessarily at risk. It's just that they need to, cut expenses and cut bait with some parts of the company which aren't necessarily turning maximum profitability. Right, like the question is obviously whether they consider Crunchyroll worth keeping hold of. Do they think that there is potential for more growth there? I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that at 3 million paying subscribers, you might have reached the top end of your market there.
It's a weird thing because then you also have to consider, like, as we keep talking about in these podcasts, right? Netflix, for better or worse, has made a very, noticeable effort to muscle into that territory. And you had Amazon there for a little while at least. I mean, we kind of saw how that turned out, but
Amazon can come back in whenever they want.
Right. I mean, my point is that there are a lot of competitors in the scene now, and so it is. I am curious. I mean, I think that is why Crunchyroll is trying to get into production, right? Like because. If you get to advertise your anime as not just anime, but, a Crunchyroll anime, right? In the same way that Netflix is trying to, really sell the Netflix original label. I think that is, for better or worse, that appears to be the next logical step of these import localization outfits.
Right, having specialization. I'll also point out, since Funimation has been purchased by Sony, they've kind of been kicking Crunchyroll's ass in terms of licenses every season. Where they
some more resources to throw around, right?
Yeah, because I guess with that Sony money, they can probably make more bids on licenses. But they've been getting, like, if not the majority, an equal amount of shows to Crunchyroll over the past couple seasons, and I would think that also is a big factor in Crunchyroll trying to reach out into making their own productions and trying to diversify their, revenue streams.
I mean, claiming those licenses is also like almost a double win for Funimation because, of course, they have a physical release business as well that those licenses can be applied to. So, you'd assume once they win the battle in terms of securing a streaming license, they're probably going to negotiate for a physical release license as well as part of that package. And granted, physical releases are, small fry compared to the streaming rights.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, it remains to be seen how much longer the physical release, angle remains relevant, but...
Yeah.
I mean, it's... If nothing else, it is a prestige thing at this point. Yeah. Right. Like, there's certainly some value in it. The question is how much and for how long.
Yeah. So we'll see where that goes, but one thing that we know for sure is the other big news item from the past week. KissAnime is dead. And, well, I guess Kiss Manga as well. I didn't even know that was a thing. But KissAnime being, of course, the foremost...
Notorious,
de facto,
I would say.
the most well known of the shady anime streaming sites, where you could just hop on the website and just watch whatever, risking whatever malware as you get bombarded by ads. And go ahead, Zig, if you want.
I was just going to say, I think it's easy to mock this because, it's a pirate site. Pirate sites come and go all this time. But as somebody who fairly often interacts with anime fans of a younger generation, I think KissAnime had developed a certain amount of cachet. As silly as that sounds, it certainly had started building a brand to some level.
Yes, I would broadly agree with that, but I feel like I also wonder how much of that is just that it was the only one left in town, so to speak.
Yeah, it kind of won because there used to be, I think, a lot of them, but
yeah, because I think we can all speak to living in that era, that early internet era of anime streaming, when it was watching videos chopped up into thirds on YouTube, or horizontally flipped to try to beat the YouTube algorithm.
I mean,
or,
let us not forget.
Number of...
That's what Crunchyroll was originally.
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally, right? I mean, yes. I mean, that's kind of why I think these two stories are kind of linked, and for better or worse, I guess Crunchyroll and KissAnime kind of represent two paths that one can take from those origins.
Right.
And, I think, I think, look, If you're a kid or you don't have a lot of money, I totally understand the benefits and motivation to use a site like KissAnime. I think that a site like that, a service like that, will probably always have its place in
I think that
any
also
fandom. But...
I think also that represents the internet consumption habits of younger viewers who are mostly on tablets and phones, platforms that are not conducive to downloads or torrents. Also,
yeah, a lot of people don't have PCs anymore.
Yeah. Also, the most shocking thing about this announcement to me was the revelation that most of Gen Z do not know what torrenting is, which is kind of insane. As somebody
that's definitely the thing that really kind of caught me off guard. But then it's in a weird way, it almost makes sense that torrenting is actually a weirdly millennial-specific era technology.
Yeah, I mean, streaming is a much more convenient way to do it. I
feel like there were a lot of shows also that maybe were more obscure and did not have seeders necessarily, but were still on the repository of a weird...
I kind of push back against that because I have seen the argument that KissAnime was also a form of archiving.
Come on!
That's not what I'm trying to get at.
I thought that's where you were going with here. I was like, I am going to push back against that.
I'm saying specifically in the context of knowing how to torrent something.
Okay, fine. Yeah, totally. No, I get it. It is accessible, right? All you have to do is type in, Google, fucking watch anime free online, and KissAnime's right there. So I totally do get that, and I think there's something to be said about making that stuff accessible. I think, as Zig was kind of getting, I think it is interesting though to realize. Oh right, downloading and torrenting is actually kind of a very specific, weirdly narrow window of the era of the internet. And obviously, torrenting is still around, right? I mean, to get back to the archiving tangent, I think the majority of archiving of anime is done now through torrents. So I think it'll always have its place. But it is interesting to realize, if you're a kid and you want to watch your anime and not pay for it.
Right,
I guess,
and you have you don't have a PC, you have an iPad or something. It's not like you can do that easily.
I mean, it's just another evolution in the process. I mean, I think of all of us, only Jill and I are old enough to remember tape trading, but that was definitely
before my time.
But that was definitely a thing, and at one point, it was inconceivable that Western anime fandom could have survived without tape trading. and then obviously that is not even like the faintest, remotest hint of a thing anymore.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the main reason why I can't necessarily mourn the death of KissAnime that much is because, for better or worse, like, the loss of KissAnime is not on the same level as, like, losing,
that like 2-week period where Nia was down or whatever.
Yeah, like, I think at least the way anime is right now, like, now don't get me wrong, as a mecha fan, believe me, there's a lot of old mecha that is just really hard to find, even through torrenting. For example, like, I will probably never get to watch high-res subbed version of Dragonar, but
isn't that on High Dive?
You're thinking of Dragonar Academy, sir, not the Dragonar we're talking about.
No, I mean Dragonar Up Left Up.
Not Dragonar Academy, the big girl show.
No, yes, it is confusing.
Yeah, no, Dragonar Academy was very bad. I wrote a first look post of that.
I mean the old mecha anime. Anyways, my point being, like,
Metal Armor Dragonar.
Right, even with torrenting, that stuff can be hard to find. But I think for the most part, like, KissAnime dies, but again, like, that's the things, like, yes, Crunchyroll and Funimation and High Dive and shit, I guess even Sentai and Netflix are still here, right? Like, that. This is not a case of that information being lost. It's mostly just a venue for accessing it.
I just want to say and make it clear, I don't think any of us are mourning the death of KissAnime, and because, okay. I'll kind of come from my direction of, I'm the lawful good of anime fandom here, but I tend to pay if at all possible.
Of course, yeah. No, I don't think there's any question of that.
So and I'm definitely an advocate for, if the show is legally available in your area of the world, that you should pay for it. And in most cases, if it is available, it's available on a streaming service like Crunchyroll, and which is not very expensive to, not a huge expense.
I think that's the key difference, so, if I might just interrupt there, is that, like, it's not, I've seen some people compare this to, like, the death of Napster or something like that, and that's simply not the case, because all of that anime is out there, it's cheaply and openly available. Like you said, Crunchyroll has an ad-supported tier, and, the accessibility argument just doesn't cut. Just doesn't hold any water in this day.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Crunchyroll's not available in places outside of the U.S. a lot of times. Yeah. I mean, you can VPN that if you're willing to go to a shady website to watch whatever, then you can probably figure out how to VPN Crunchyroll. But sites like KissAnime always left a bad taste in my mouth because they're like actually profiting from the shady ads, and they're watermarking the videos and all that.
It's theft. Like it's pure and simple theft.
That is actually just straight up theft, as opposed to fan subbing or something. So that's always from my point of view, it's kind of good riddance as far as that's concerned. But it'll be interesting to see. I feel like somebody's going to try it again, right?
Another one will pop up.
Another one will pop up.
Yep, it's like how there's 5 million manga sites.
Right.
There's always going to be a demand for that, especially now, like we said, where people aren't, where the younger generations aren't on PCs. They don't know how to torrent. They don't know the other means. Like this is the way they know to do it. And
I think the question is, like, other sites exist already, other sites will exist.
Right.
But the question is, can something achieve the, like, recognition level of a KissAnime where it becomes
the question is,
ubiquitous?
Should they? Like,
no, absolutely not, of course. And
right, but yeah, I mean,
and also I think that this takedown and other subsequent actions we've seen are the realization, both by original Japanese companies and by Western rights holders, that there is more money in the business now, there is more legal muscle to flex and more investment to protect, and I think that reflects in the increased use of legal takedowns and banning orders and stuff like this.
Yeah. I mean, anime is like kind of bigger than it's been since...
It's the biggest it's ever been.
Probably ever, yeah. If we're talking internationally, especially.
I mean, and especially if we're talking in terms of pure money made.
Right. I believe domestic numbers continue to drop and international numbers continue to rise.
Yeah, I mean that is the general trend. Yeah, I mean I wonder if that'll change once Japan finally fully gets behind streaming. But yes, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, Japan's also just going to have less people than the rest of the world.
Yes,
streaming,
I mean yes, that too.
Right.
Yeah, so that's probably just going to be the natural order of things. But yeah, it's anime. It's kind of this. There's similar problems going on with all media as technology changes, but anime in particular has always had that long history of the fan subbing communities.
Yeah, I mean, in the West at least, anime and piracy are inescapably linked.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, we still need fan subbing thanks to Netflix. So.
Right, which the GLORIO blog does not endorse piracy.
But y'all should go watch that Dorohedoro. I'm just saying.
Speaking of, let's talk about Great Pretender.
Yeah,
an interesting example.
Yeah,
actually,
Dorohedoro is
out later this week.
Yes.
So, Great Pretender.
Yeah, Dorohedoro has been out, and Great Pretender is coming out. I think the end of the month
this
or something,
week.
Or maybe this week. So
the 20th. Yeah,
you can legally watch it soon, but let's talk about it anyway.
I feel like the Netflix. I don't know. I feel like the fan sub quality for Great Pretender has been really good. I'm curious to see the Netflix subs for that.
Yeah, I mean, especially for a production that kind of for a fan sub that has to juggle potentially multiple languages, I have to give some props to the Great Pretender fan sub guys. They're doing solid work there. But yeah, I guess. It's weird talking about this show because, again, thanks to Netflix, everybody's kind of in a different place with this show, right? I mean, I think me and Iro, then Gel, and then Yuzig are all in literally different places.
Yes.
On the show.
Yes.
Right.
It's very odd.
Yeah. So we're on the final arc that's currently available. There's going to be more episodes later.
Yes.
So so this is episodes 10 through
11 through 14.
Or 11 through 14.
Yeah.
This is the London arc, if you will. Yeah. Yes, and we're all in different places. So Zig, you haven't seen any of it.
I've
correct?
seen the first episode of this.
Okay, you've seen the first episode.
Okay.
G and Ira, you've seen 2 episodes.
Correct.
And I've seen all of it.
Uh-huh.
But so I guess maybe I'll start with what your guys' impressions of it is so far.
Sure.
I guess for a little bit of context. This is their next job, which eventually takes them to London. They start, I think, in France, and then they end up in London. And this is the Great Pretender take on the art heist. For the classic, con man, crime movie.
Oh, let me tell you, man, art fraud is a classic.
It's a classic.
Glad that we're getting into this.
I mean,
it's a classic setup. But what do you guys think about what you've seen of the arc so far?
I like it. I might be a little biased here because it is related to art, but I'm kind of digging a lot of what Great Pretender is playing with this arc. If you ever, as I was telling Iro the other day, if you ever just feel like you want to get lost in a Wikipedia hole for an afternoon, look up art fraud. Look up how art fraud has evolved. How, the cat and mouse arms race between fraudsters and museums has escalated with every passing decade. It's a really fascinating subject, and it's rife with a lot of potential in terms of not to say that the previous arc wasn't that as well, because sports betting is also a very common venue for fraud and conning, but art fraud is like a classic premise.
On that note, I would also like to recommend the famous Orson Welles documentary F for Fake, which is about art fraud as well, and is simultaneously a documentary about art fraud and also kind of a fraud itself, but it's really interesting and worth watching. So just to put that out there, it's one of his lesser known works, but it's super interesting.
But yeah, I think so far, okay, the thing I'll say so far about this one that I think is working for me is they're keeping, I don't know if the scope is necessarily narrow, but I feel like for better or worse, the Singapore arc had a lot of moving parts, if that makes sense. Like...
Yes, I think a few too many moving parts.
Yeah, that was kind of our general feeling about it, which is a shame because Abby's probably my favorite character because I'm biased there. But
I mean, she's also great. Yeah.
but you know, I think the way they're approaching Cynthia's backstory, combined with like a lot of this arc being about Makoto having to basically clean up his own mess, and like the aim of this job being like deeply personal to like multiple members of the crew, I think potentially is going to make this one work a lot better because the scope is a lot more focused this time around.
Right. Hopefully, because while Abby was central to the previous arc, the emotional payoff kind of ended up being about one of the brothers or whatever, and we just didn't give a shit about him.
Yeah, it was yeah.
And I think here there's more possibility for the emotional payoff to actually be centered around Cynthia.
Right. I think that is like a good way of putting it.
See, I can't say too much.
Oh no!
Man, that's making me worried.
Yeah. I've having seen the whole arc, I'm gonna limit my comments. The only thing I will add is something that I noticed right away in the first couple episodes, even without completing it. I do feel like they start to lean into some of the same criticisms we talked about last episode, where perhaps we do spend a little more time on the backstory characters than we need to, and also the whole trying to make the characters like morally redeemable to a greater extent than they need to be.
Right, when it's like, this is a show about scoundrels, the show should embrace that aspect.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only part of that I'll mention is the fact that, you know, they're depicting, well, deep down, Cynthia is just this, you know, nice, normal girl who used to be a waitress, and it's like, why can't she be a, you know, badass, globe-trotting, champagne-guzzling, you know,
she is now.
art thief? You know, what's wrong with that? I mean,
the show also... sorry, go on.
I'll have more to say about that once everybody's watched it, but
sure.
That's kind of that's where my brain started moving right away, even in the beginning of the arc.
I mean, I'd also say that, you know, the show does the same thing which a lot of con man shows do, which is it makes the bad guys so like cartoonishly evil.
No, I think we're fine with that.
No. That's what I'm saying, though. I'm saying that's fine, but it gives you even less reason to try and humanize the characters because, not humanize them, but try and excuse their excesses because they're already going up against the worst people in the world. So we don't really need additional reasons to to sympathize with them. We already do, if that makes sense.
Right. Like I don't even like whatever British McFuckface is like such a fucking piece of shit. It's like, I don't need Cynthia to be like this
personal now.
You know, this like wronged heroine. Like she could just be like, "Nah, this dude's a fucking dick. Let's take
him down." Yeah, he deserves it already, right? So,
but
I think that, you know, we talked about that last time as well, and I think that probably holds up on this arc. Again, I will save the rest of that for when you guys finish it. But
the last thing I do want to say about Great Pretender is the thing that, for better or worse, I mean, I'm still looking forward to the end of this arc, but I feel like the conversation that keeps coming up, like, between Iro and I is, like, I feel like this show is really going to hinge a lot on how they eventually address Laurent as a character, because the problem with him is, like, as long as he's involved in these schemes, there's not a lot of tension. Like, and I mean, maybe there doesn't need to be, right? Like, you know, everybody knows Lupin's always going to get the score in the end, but I feel like with Great Pretender, right, like, when Makoto's the one doing the scheming, it's a lot more exciting because we know he's not perfect. We know he's, in fact, extremely fallible, and that adds some tension to the caper, but as long as Laurent is involved, it's
everything will eventually turn out to be his plan all along.
Yeah, it feels a little too comfortable right now, right? Like it's just it's just I don't feel that tension anymore because I know that this is all going according to his keikaku, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, even kind of the one, you know, mess up that Makoto makes, and I guess it's the first episode of this, right? Where
Which I will say was a very good twist. But...
Yeah, but even that's just like just the setup for the plot. It's not like
right, and also implied that Laurent set that up. So
right, yeah. So like, yeah, he's always like one step ahead somehow. Like you almost start to roll your eyes eventually when they finally say, oh well, when they cut to him sitting in his chair looking smug. Because he again, all according to his plans. So yeah, no, I agree with that as well. So it'll be an interesting discussion once you guys wrap that up. So maybe next time we'll touch base on that again. Okay.
Well, speaking of shows that don't inspire interesting discussions,
let's talk about Appare Ranman.
Hooray!
Continues to be good for about 2 minutes each episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
And all right, so episode 5, we had like the pre-race race or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Which is cool for like 2 minutes, as when they're actually racing, like when they're like trying to get past the moving train and all that.
Yeah.
Stuff was pretty fun. And then we get stuck into town, and it's going to be kind of a recurring theme, I think, through the whole show. But in these episodes, they're trying so hard to make us think that the main characters are likable and that we should care. And they've got a collection of like we've talked about Appare himself at length, but all of the characters are like a collection of some of like my least favorite character types.
It's like it's kind of astounding, honestly. But
like you've got like Appare. We've talked about Appare as like the emotionless genius guy who doesn't understand feelings. And you got Kasami as like the the lawful good idiot who's really even dumber than I think we realized in the beginning of the show. And then you've got what's the kid's name? Hototo, who's like the angsty brat character another thing I'm totally sick of is revenge plot lines. You can throw that in with time travel as like my most like least favorite overused plot lines at this point.
It's one of those things where there are individual pieces of Appare Ranman that I think would work just fine because of its like wacky racist Wild West setting. Like little Indian boy out for revenge against the white man. Like honestly, I'm totally fine with that plotline existing in like your wacky Wild West setting, but
sure, it's
just that like the show does it with so little pomp and circumstance. It does it all so just blandly. It's
and how that one subplot has eaten up so much screen time,
right? Like
and so much of what the main team's like been doing on screen has been tied up with that. Over this bratty kid who's just like running in trying to get himself killed every time, which also drives me crazy, which kind of culminates into episode the end of episode 7, where he's literally standing in front of Gil's car with his little hatchet. Like, what are you trying to accomplish here, kid? And like this takes up like half the episode of them just like standing there talking.
The payoff isn't even good because then we get the reveal that those two guys are not even actually members of the 1003 gang. Right, they're actually just good-hearted scoundrels who don't hurt women or children.
Yeah, well, even though they tried to murder everybody just hours ago, but yes.
But you know what I mean, right? It's like
no, they totally took the teeth. Right. Whatever teeth were left in the show are now gone.
Like we really couldn't just have like Mexican Darth Vader with a minigun be Mexican Darth Vader with a minigun. It had to be...
I do like that he just walks around with basically like a Vickers machine gun.
Yeah, just slinging that over his shoulder. But then they take all the teeth out. Like it's like because it is this Wild West wacky racist setting, I feel like you're just allowed to have murderous scoundrels in your story, right? Like it's fine, like
yeah.
And
so it's like even some of the things that we were kind of more positive on are just
ruined,
like getting
right
dismantled in front of our eyes.
All we got left is TJ. TJ is our last hope for this show. TJ and his boombox gramophone.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like, they're going more of like, instead of people, racing and getting by with, whatever crazy, contraptions or, conflicts or things that could be going on, it's going to be there's going to be a whole lot of power of friendship stuff going on here instead.
It's already here, man. It's here.
Like even just like the, when the main group's car breaks down and the other two come back to save them, like, it would have made much more sense to me to have like Appare come up with some kind of crazy way of making the car run again or something.
It's also
than
like,
just, otherwise they would just be dead in the water if it wasn't for power of friendship, right? So like,
yeah, it's kind of frustrating because, like, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, if you watch a lot of these kind of like race style like stories, the moment where one of the characters who's in the lead gives up their lead to help the heroes is like a pretty common trope.
Right.
But you kind of have to have the emotional payoff, right? Like, you have to earn it, which, Appare Ranman continues to not do, so... Yeah, I don't know, man.
And then they go off with Appare is like, what are these feelings I'm having?
Like, the thing is, they have a handful of bits that are like, shows they could probably play this properly if they wanted. Like, there's the whole montage of Appare being like, well, I'm so smart, I'm gonna help everybody do their things even better, and he just keeps fucking it up for everybody instead, like, as a joke, and that was okay.
Yeah, that was fine. It's like, I almost kind of wish that was like 4 episodes earlier, right? Because, like, if you're gonna have your insufferable genius style character, like, you gotta take him down a few notches every now and then. Otherwise, it's just insufferable to watch. Like, I don't know who. I would love to talk to like someone out there who is a fan of that style of character, because like, I feel like I need to like pick their brain. I need to understand what they get out of that character in fiction.
Let me tell you about a little something called isekai.
I was
well, I think
note or something. Right?
I think a lot of times those characters appeal to
younger audiences.
Well,
we can't keep blaming the kids for all our problems.
No, I'm not blaming it on. I'm not blaming it just on being young, but I'm trying to think of the most delicate words I can use.
Assholes.
Immature idiots.
The people who are like, if I'm smart enough, I can be as much of a dick as long as I'm right.
Well, people who are, perhaps more introverted, antisocial, and rely on things like, their intelligence as, something propping up their self-esteem. That type of character probably is more relatable to them.
Sure,
fair enough.
That's my armchair psychiatrist take on that.
Last thing
for the rest of us, it's kind of annoying to watch.
Yeah. I'll just say, the last thing I'm going to say about Appare Ranman for now is that the next episode of Appare Ranman is called Heavy Rain, and that led me to start thinking about, I guess there actually is a way you could actually make Appare Ranman worse, and it would be David Cage presents Appare Ranman.
Here's your strip scene over
I'm
here.
just saying, imagine David Cage's Appare Ranman, now with even more problematic racist stereotypes.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I don't know if they've been handling the racism and sexism with any more subtlety than David Cage anyway, so...
David Cage's Appare Ranman, now with even more inhuman-sounding dialogue.
Yeah, I it's not like they've been doing great in those areas either, so I don't know.
There's that fucking sequence where TJ is like singing along or whatever to the song, and they just had the voice actor go like, I don't know,
yeah, that was very good. Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's driving like alongside the guy who's supposed to be chasing him, and they both have their windows rolled down so they can speak to each other.
Which is like, that's the kind of sensibility I really love. It's like, okay, these guys are like hated, like hated enemies of each other, but they are racing neck and neck with their windows down, which is...
I mean, they're going to be best friends by the end, so it's just...
Probably.
Let's just get it over with.
Oh, the version of Appare Ranman that leads to that dumbassery more would have been a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah. Alright. Let's put that aside for now and move on to Gundam Build Divers Re-Rise.
Indeed.
We're approaching the end.
Yeah.
And how are we looking as we're moving into the home stretch here?
It's not as bad as it could be, I guess. The plot of the last couple episodes has basically been we're ramping up to the final battle to save Furry Planet, and to do this, we should train. And so they put out a call of the MMO to basically set up VR training with other people in the MMO, which is an excuse to bring back every character from Season 1 to fight in a big raid against the heroes or whatever.
Can I ask something?
Yeah. What's up?
I know that at one point the twist in this show was there's a planet of furries. Is that in the game, or have they actually gone to space?
They have.
You haven't been listening.
You haven't been listening to the
podcast, have you?
It was the twist was that they thought they were in the game, but what's actually happening is the game.
It's Ender's Game.
Yeah,
it's
the game is transporting them to a real location.
Does that mean that they have real Gundams now?
Kinda, yeah.
On the furry planet, yes. The Gundams become real on the furry planet.
Yep, and lots of furries actually perished.
Right, the furries are real. They are real sapient beings on a real physical planet that it can be accessed through the MMO.
Is there any explanation as to how it can be accessed through the MMO?
Of course not.
Quantum waves. Who the fuck cares?
Sure. Okay.
So here's my problem with these episodes. So 3 out of 4 people here have finished at least the first season of Gundam Build Fighters, and so you are familiar now with the episode that
I watched like half of it too.
You should have finished it, my guy. Yeah. But anyways, okay. Well, you know what the show is. But anyways, point is, every Gundam Build series since the original has had an episode that is either the penultimate or even a final episode that is basically deep cuts the episode. It is the episode in which the team just goes wild with all of their, just in-jokes and, deep cut references that they want to show in the Gundam
let's
Build
all
series.
have fun episode.
Was there one in Try? I don't really remember.
Kind of the last episode.
There was, I think Try had one, right? Because, I don't remember the specifics of the episode, but the bit, of course, is that Raul shows up in a blue Dom, being the joke that Ramba Raul finally got the Doms he requested.
Yes.
Which is, the one and only good joke that Try ever came up with.
But yeah, this is where they're pulling out the one Gundam from that 1993 OVA that is only available on VHS tape in Japan or something, right?
That is what this episode is supposed to be.
Right.
The problem is, all of the callbacks are just to season 1 of Build Divers. Because
they don't bring any new deep cuts.
Right, so no new deep cuts happen. It's just, hey, remember those guys from season 1? And it's kinda, not really.
No, because they all sucked.
But the episode keeps being hey, you remember these guys, right? Oh man, these guys were so cool. It's no, not really. Hey, remember me? I'm a vor fetishist. And it's no, I don't want to remember you.
Christ.
Please go away. You're making me uncomfortable.
Stop talking about how delicious this battle is.
Stop talking about eating me. I don't
like it.
Stop, please.
Can we report it to the GMs?
Yeah, and it's a bit of a shame because there are bits and pieces of that episode where we get excited. Mainly because there's a couple characters from season 1 of Divers that we really liked, but yeah, it's just not a super well done one of those because none of the cuts are that deep. None of the references are that good.
Yep,
and even the fighting itself is not great because it's almost I guess I'm glad Zig is here because maybe he might understand this. It's kind of so you have these new guys, right? And they're winning a lot of fights and they're doing really cool shit. But then suddenly you introduce the old guys and the new guy's not allowed to beat the old guy because the old guy has a ton of clout going for them, or corporate thinks the old guy has a lot of clout for them. And so
what you're telling me is it's a metaphor for the Gundam franchise.
yeah, just the whole episode is basically the new guys getting buried by the old guys, right? the whole fight is basically them losing like a dozen times in a row to the old crew to show how powerful the old crew is. But we don't like the old crew. The old crew fucking suck. The new crew's not that much better, but they're like marginally more interesting and likable than the old crew.
One of them's got a Wadam.
Also,
already better.
Like, also, in theory, they're meant to be the protagonists, so you're meant to like them, right? Like...
It's just so weird, and so, like, the fights are just these weird stalemates that don't go anywhere, because, like, they don't want to show the heroes of the current show losing too much, but they have this weird, like, insistence that the old heroes can't be shown losing on screen, and... Yeah, it's...
See, I feel that kind of runs counter to, like, the whole Gundam ethos, quite frankly, which was, we're never afraid to show our main characters get the shit kicked out of them, honestly. Like...
I mean, is this just where the kid show angle kicks
I guess
in?
it might be, yeah.
God, and, like, we complained about this before, but, their insistence on having power friendship, happy times with everyone... when it would be trivially easy, given the circumstances, to have more emotional depth to the relationship.
Hold up. As I'm trying to piece everything back together again, wasn't the current main guy gonna murder the other main guy at some point?
Yeah, right.
So they meet, and they're both...
Remember, we told you that, like, for about 10 minutes there, the show became Yoko Taro presents Gundam Build Divers, and then it pulled back.
And they're just he just bottled all that up, and it's not even a thing anymore.
So they meet, and then it's this really milquetoast. Like, they both are like, "Oh man, sorry, bro. You must have had a rough time. Oh no, don't worry, it wasn't your fault. We're buddies now. Let's shake hands. One Build Divers
lame.
to another Build Divers."
So
it's
lame.
like I kind of
that would have been good. That would have been good if he was like still like secretly harboring resentment or something, and have honestly, that bubble up or something. Like, there's ways you could have done that,
right? And like, even if you have to adhere to like kids show logic of the heroes always have to be good, you could even go the angle of like the main character of Re-Rise being like, "I don't forgive you, but I don't hold it against you." You know what I mean? Like I don't forgive you. You know, I'm never. You know, I still don't like you, but like I'm not gonna let that get in the way of my future. But no, it's just straight up like.
Yeah, we're cool now.
Yeah, we're cool. We're gonna shake hands. Isn't this great, guys? The hero of Season 1 and the hero of Season 2 are shaking hands. Don't you love this? Aren't you... Isn't this, like, designed to be loved? Please love this, guys.
I mean... If I can chip in as somebody who has not seen much of Build Divers, like I watched the first 5 or 6 episodes of the first season and was profoundly underwhelmed, but like the key appeal to me of Build Fighters, at least, was always, it's the Yu-Gi-Oh thing, right? Like, we are taking this very, very silly thing very seriously, and the comedy and the drama comes from that, in treating this silly thing as the most important thing in the world. And if you're telling me that, like, that they're actually going to alien planets and rescuing species and stuff, like, my question is, why is this a Build Divers show rather than just a Gundam show at that point?
I don't know!
I mean, this is the question we were asking in the first few episodes, and at some point we just said, I guess this is what this show is, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
you gotta slap the Gundam name on it somehow.
Like, the show is basically halfway towards already it might as well just be an AU Gundam. It might as well be its own timeline. Like, I don't know why it feels it still has to be part of the Gundam Build franchise, but here we are, I guess.
Here we are.
I mean, I guess perhaps internally that's like Sunrise's way of saying this is like a safe for kids Gundam, like there won't be horrifying gratuitous character death or people taking shits inside the cockpit in this one.
Those furries got nuked from orbit.
They got...
A million,
the whole city got blown up.
A million people is a statistic.
So, do you guys have any wild speculation or predictions for the ending? I'm assuming it's going to end by the time we...
Yeah, I think next week might be the last episode.
It's just going to be as generic an ending as possible.
Yeah, they'll fight the bad guy, they'll beat him. They've already started talking about how they don't have to kill the bad guy, that maybe they can redeem him. So, like, I already suspect that, like, they won't even kill the bad guy. They'll just, like, reach out their hand and, fucking power friendship or some bullshit. Whatever. Look, for all the times Iro and I, like, feverishly talked about Gundam Build Divers Re-Rise as if, like, this show, like, could have been something else, like, we know in our heart of hearts exactly what it's going to be by the end, so...
Yeah. Alright. Well, it's probably still better than the next show we're going to talk
Speaking
about.
of a show with zero potential whatsoever.
Ooh.
So, we're still watching The God of High School. It's entirely my fault. I take responsibility.
Entirely your fault.
And the only reason I keep watching it is because it weirdly enough comes out on Mondays, and I have nothing else to watch while I'm eating dinner after work.
Christ.
So, it's still quite bad though.
Yeah.
And doesn't deserve the amount of production it gets. Episode 5 had the big fight between the two main guys. I can't think of their names right now.
Whatever.
And it did indeed look pretty cool.
It looked really fucking good. Holy shit. Like, what the
right,
fuck?
they did the indestructible thing.
They did the indestructible, like, ink splotches thing. Oh, man, it was like, Sung-Ho Park is such a talented man. He deserves better than this.
This was definitely the biggest example of how big of a waste of talent the show is, as far as what we've seen so far. It's fucking disgusting. But, like, I felt zero emotional, like, investment in this fight. Like, it brought out nothing in me. But you could not deny just how just purely well crafted that fight was. Like, it's if there were any emotions involved in it, it was just straight up, wow, these guys did a good job making this look cool. Like, I felt I felt happy for the animators, but you know, the actual content is this show. Like, there's so many things we could probably poke around that are wrong with it, but, like, is it just going too fast for us to care? Is that why? I don't know.
I think that's part of it.
Because, like, we talked about, you know, last time with, like, the whole wedding episode thing, how they just blew through that in, like, 10 minutes, and, you know, they're using that as, like, the basis for, you know, our emotional core of what's happening.
Like, oh, man, my new good friends.
Yeah, I forget if it was this week or which episode it was where the karate guy is like has his flashback to like all the big moments in their friendship, and they were all from episode 4.
Yeah, it's like, you mean like the course of like 2 episodes, right?
It's like you guys have had like literally like 15 minutes of combined screen time together, and like we're supposed to care like you're now all just best friends.
Yeah, it definitely feels like this thing got like weirdly compressed because, you know, this will lead into the next thing, but they reveal that the next arc is going to be, you know, the South Korea national tournament, right? So the representatives from each region are going to be fighting in one big tournament.
Each region and Seoul.
Yeah, I think the compression's even worse in episode 6 because they throw so much into episode 6. I had no idea what the hell was going on.
And then God of High School had the audacity to fucking break what might have been the greatest GLORIO podcast bit in history over its knee and destroyed it.
We were working on this whole bit, and then the show pulled the rug out from under us.
So they said
it's the time for nationals.
This is pointless, but we're just going to explain.
All right, so they're all right, it's time for nationals, and the main team is from Seoul, right?
Right.
And so we were like, so I had this thought, like, I wonder if like in Japanese anime, you think in South Korea they have their own weirdly specific regional stereotypes?
Right, because we're thinking of like Gundam Build Fighters or whatever, where you have the other Japan people and you got the like Osakan guy.
Right, like, you're like, oh shit, the Kansai team is here.
Right, there's always the Kansai character.
Right, and like they're always like in the dub, they're always given either a Texan or a Brooklyn accent. And then we started to wonder if like Korea had its own stereotypes, but because we're dumb Americans, the only other city we've ever heard of in South Korea was Busan, and thus began our Busan English dub jokes. You know, like, I'm walking here in Busan. Or, you know, some real NYC Guido shit, right? Like, let's go Mets, baby, love the Mets in Busan.
The pizza over here is way better than the pizza over there in Seoul.
Go down the block. All right, believe me. Go down the block halfway. This place called Kimchi King. It's got the best cannoli you ever had in Busan.
You know what's funny is I live in New York. I can't do that accent.
And we have
I would sound just as bad as you guys.
Good. I mean, that's the thing. All right, so for context, Aaron and I are Californians, so of course we were doing extremely bad New York accents.
I'm not sure anybody alive can legitimately do that accent.
Oh no, yeah, no, there are people that talk like that. Though.
I want to meet those people.
Yeah, listen to Yankee Sports Radio.
Chopped cheese at the deli.
I am appalled that you would suggest I would listen to a Yankees sports radio.
That was entirely intentional. But Zig, I don't want to bring our personal differences onto the podcast. We'll keep that separate.
Anyway,
Then, the episode happened, and they listed all of the competitors in the national tournament, and Busan wasn't listed. They listed 7 other regions that none of us have never heard of. I ain't never heard of Gangwon or Jeju, but...
So, mid-episode, I'm looking in Wikipedia on, like, administrative regions of South Korea.
We going down the wiki hole.
You guys were very dedicated to this.
Of how provinces are divided in South Korea.
Where the shit is Busan if Seoul is here as their own team? Everything else is its own province. And I'm like, well, what
Seoul
province?
Is listed as a city.
Right, and I'm like, well, what province is Busan in? And it took me like 10 minutes to figure out that South Korea has like city-states, basically.
Right, basically, some cities are so large they count as their own administrative regions.
I mean, that's how like New York City's like that.
Right, but then we were like, wait, but if Seoul like made it into the tournament, what happened to the Busan team? And then we started wondering, like, oh, maybe the author has like some weird regional beef with Busan, and so they just like excluded Busan from it to imply that fighters from Busan don't even rate in the national tournament, not compared to Gangwon-do or Jeju, and
apparently the like dreadlocks guy from the first couple of episodes was from Busan High School.
So there you go, proven. Author of God of High School hates Busan.
Yep.
Scathing expose. You guys really got to the bottom of that one.
Yeah,
so the show's still bad, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we had we kind of alluded to they conveniently for the next tournament is going to be teams so that all 3 of the main characters are in it, right? But I don't even remember which did Jin Mori win? I forget, but I guess he did. And then there was so much stuff that they start throwing out in episode 6.
Taryak or whatever, like...
Right, like they start showing some of the other students who have magic powers, like to shoot fire and open portals and things like that.
Borrowing the power of the gods.
Yeah. Okay. So here's my thing with the regional bits. Again, I don't know anything about Korea really, but I'm assuming Seoul is like one of the biggest regions, and they didn't have any of these magic people that have like superpowers.
Surely Karate Guy and Moon Sword Lady.
They're gonna get stands by the end.
Well, they're gonna get there, right? But the other ones are already like shooting fire and stuff. Like,
I mean,
that didn't add up to me. But
it's battle shonen logic, right? Of course, like the other competitors have to be like a step above the heroes for now,
so they can rise above the occasion. Right, when they're at their
and also like they do this weird subplot of like the tournament is being infiltrated by like shape-shifting assassins or something. I don't even fucking know.
Yeah, like what is
all right, the Great Six or some shit.
I mean, everything you're saying makes this show sound extremely good.
What if it was all presented in an incredibly shitty way?
But like, what if you packed all of this into 10 minutes? Like this is all happening in like half an episode. And there's just so much going on, and there wasn't even any really cool fights in episode 6 either.
No, and my suspicion is, I don't know if we're gonna get any cool fights from here on out, because now that they've introduced the stands, now that they've introduced that like people have magical ghost powers, like
it's gonna be all shooting lasers at each other instead of fighting.
This is the thing I've banged the drum about this show since episode 1, is like as long as they keep up the hand-to-hand fighting, like this is gonna be a great show. But the moment they start like shooting beams at each other, like fucking throw this shit out, like.
Yep. Well, I don't know, guys. We made it to episode 6. Right. We're halfway there.
Well, Iro and I will continue to hold out hopes that maybe Busan will show up later in the show somehow.
Maybe I'll find something else to do on Monday nights and then forget about
Please
it.
do.
I don't know. There's like some video games I can play or something. I'll try and find something. All right. Oh god, it's not really going to get better in the next one, is it?
It's really not.
So how far have you guys made it into Japan Sinks?
6.
6. So
So the cult arc is finished.
yes.
So spoilers, it's a cult arc. I think we kind of alluded to that last time.
Except, you know what the real spoiler is? The real twist of the Japan Sinks like cult arc is that apparently the cult wasn't evil.
Okay. How does that work?
The cult was just a cult, and they apparently had some weird beliefs, but they were totally normal. And then an earthquake happens, and our heroes leave.
I feel like totally normal and cult are not generally things that are said together or make much sense.
Yeah, isn't by definition cults not good somehow?
That's what we thought. Like, so anybody who's watched enough post-apocalyptic fiction knows that eventually when you have, like, your cult arc, the eventual twist is always just, alright, when does the other shoe drop? When do they reveal they commit child sacrifices or eat human flesh or whatever, right? That never happens in Japan Sinks.
Right, they just
The other
get hit
shoe
by
never drops.
They just get hit by another earthquake. Main characters leave. One of their group decides, I'm going to stay behind because this place was great. They put weed in their curry.
I have the definition of a cult here. A system of religious veneration or devotion directed toward a particular figure or object. A relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. And a misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing. That's mostly negative stuff going on there.
Yeah, dude, that's exactly how I would describe this cult. But they're never revealed to do it. Like, the only slightly evil thing that's maybe hinted at is that they hoarded gold. Like,
they had a weirdly large amount of gold.
Yeah. Does gold even matter in the world at this point?
No, but there's still like a bit at the end of the 6th episode where like half the cult dies because once they're fleeing, a couple of them try to like make off with the gold, you know, and it's like no matter what, human nature is always the same. Right. But it's like
some real subtle commentary.
But like it's just super fucking lame. And like it's also like just really disjointed because like so they're a cult, right? They're a cult. They grow marijuana. They literally have a giant golden statue in their compound. But also, they have raves.
God, they do. Yeah, right.
They have raves where they do
it's
lines.
A fun cult.
They have raves where they do lines of cocaine and play Street Fighter on projectors.
That sounds like a good cult, actually.
Right, I was gonna say, if you're the cult of cocaine and Street Fighter, count me in. Like that sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
But like. But it's just...
but they keep cutting to like the dark ceremonies where people wearing robes and the kids like doing spirit shit. But like then they never go and say this is all the dark truth. It was just like, oh yeah, that dude is a spirit medium and their compound is really nice. They had yurts, they had weed, they got cocaine, Street Fighter. You know, this former sumo wrestler makes chanko for everybody. Like, it's great.
So like the main crew just like hang out there for 2 episodes and leave, and that's
basically,
it?
Yeah.
Right. The old man goes crazy and tries to kidnap the cult.
The old man kills like 3 people, right? Like that gif of the old man in the electric wheelchair. That's this arc. He like has a fucking delusional episode and like
right, but it's a delusional episode.
Right, it turns out that, he's just delusional because he's a morphine addict. He's actually an okay guy. It's like, he still killed 3 people, or 2 people, or whatever, like...
Yeah, doesn't that imply that could also happen again?
Yeah,
I think
but thankfully, he stays behind and dies there, so we don't have to worry about crazy old, weirdly racist old man anymore.
Oh,
but,
great.
Like, what was the point of any of this? Like, that's the thing, right? Like, I think fiction can be allowed to be meandering. I think characters should be allowed to do things that are not important in fiction. But the way this works out is it just contributes nothing. Like nothing is gained from this. No character development occurs because of this. Like nobody like learns anything new about themselves. Like it.
It's just a place to dump the old man. Basically.
Yeah, kind of.
And everybody's in the same place as they were when we started.
Yeah, basically. And, like, they also picked up, like, a new member of the party, a paralyzed man. And, like, Like, he's literally paralyzed from, like, the neck down, and I don't know how they're going to take care of him in the apocalypse, but they're going to try, I guess, and...
It's just really disjointed and barely makes sense.
It's just, like, it's not even just bad, it's just disjointed. Like, none of it makes sense. Like, no event, no story development, like, logically links to the next.
I mean, would you say this is a fault in the direction and production, or do you think it's a fault of the source material?
Seems like a little both.
Yeah, it might be, because, like, I decided to look up the original novel, and my understanding is that the original novel is, like, kind of closer to, like, the original Godzilla, in the sense that it's from the perspective of, like, politicians and scientists trying to, like, deal with the problem. It doesn't actually focus on people on the ground, so to speak.
Right.
Like,
so there's a lot of adaptation going on.
Yeah, like the characters in the anime are not in the book. Like, that viewpoint doesn't exist in the original novel, and so for a better.
Oh, I wonder if that would almost. I wonder how, like, directly connected it is, because, like, we've had things like them finding landmines and, like, the gas exploding and stuff like that. Like, those things would be very differently received from the perspective of, like, scientists discovering problems popping up or something, as opposed to, like, a family who's actually affected by it, right? Like, I wonder if that's all actually in the original
I do wonder, because a lot of this stuff
was that just added for the adaptation to make it more sensational?
I guess I'd have to read the book, because a lot of the events do feel weirdly specific, like the existence of, like, hidden landmines in Japan, of all places, is like...
Right.
Yeah, it's I don't know, I mean, we say this every time, we have so many questions about this show, like, it just... Nothing about it makes sense.
It just sounds like a total mess at this point. And I'm assuming the actual technical production is not holding up well either.
It's
based on what I've seen.
It's completely falling apart, dude. It's bad. It's like
Do you think perhaps this could have been a rushed production, given everything you're saying? Lack of cohesion, poor technical quality, all of these.
I think probably. I think at bare minimum, probably. It's because I mean, again, like, it is at least co-directed by Yuasa, and, like, I don't love every Yuasa work equally, but, like, they tend to at least hit, like, a certain baseline of.
You can almost never question his, like, technical merits, right?
Yeah,
right. Like, technical merits. Yeah, like, I'm sad that Yuasa made this, because now, I mean, I guess now we have something we can point to as the worst
blemish on his record.
Yeah, it's a blemish on his, like, otherwise almost spotless record.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, this was a Netflix original, and, like, an actual Netflix original, like, funded by Netflix, kind of like Devilman Crybaby. So, but Devilman Crybaby turned out really good, so I'm not sure, like, what the hell happened here.
Well, I mean, Yuasa did take a break pretty much immediately after, right?
It certainly seems like that there's a story to be told there.
Yeah. All right, well, you guys will be finishing the fight soon, right? It's only 10 episodes?
Yeah.
Only, quote unquote.
It feels much longer.
It does.
All right, well, we saved something pretty good for last here, so let's talk about DECA-DENCE.
It's great.
Oh, dude, DECA-DENCE continues to be fucking awesome. Dude,
Episode 5 had the quote-unquote final battle, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, yeah, speaking of shows that, like, really brought it out for a week, DECA-DENCE, man.
Yep. Like, we talk about God of High School having cool action scenes, but DECA-DENCE has been holding their own as well, I think.
Yeah.
And a lot of these, you're not quite on the same level, but still really good. I mean, it's a different type of fighting and everything too, but their weird Attack on Titan.
What if someone took Attack on Titan and made it actually good?
Yeah, basically. I mean,
but I think they're doing a good job balancing, the main plot and then what's going on with Natsume and
Kaburagi?
Kabu.
Yes, I don't know why I can never remember his name, but and so episode 5 had like kind of the big quote unquote final battle, what everybody thought was the final battle, which ended with Kaburagi having to jump in and fight the supposed alpha monster or whatever.
Yeah, the one that was supposedly in defeat.
Broke the game. He broke the game.
Yeah.
For a bit, which kind of flipped over to episode 6, which I was not as high on as you guys might imagine, based on my previous stance on
episode 6, I think,
the cyborg world.
Episode 6 clinched it for me.
Yeah, I was really into episode 6.
So I'll let you guys talk about that first before I say my piece.
I do want to say real quick, the one touch I really liked about episode 5 is at the end there. Like, again, I've said it before in prior podcasts about how I think this is like a show, one of the only anime I've seen that like actually plays with the like what if a video game but real premises of like, they defeat the monster, and from the human's perspective, they have just defeated their greatest foe, right? They have, in their minds, they have ensured peace for their time. They have ended the conflict for good.
Then the server reset hits.
The server resets, right? Like fucking Destiny or some shit. The server resets, more enemies show up, and like you have this great like contrast between like the humans who are just like thrown into complete and utter despair that it was all for naught. And then the gears are just like, oh yeah, more hashtag content.
Right.
Which I thought was a really good play. But
I mean, the thing I will say about, I agree with G that I think that this is the first show in forever that has done the what if a game but real life thing interestingly, and I think the interesting thing is because like it's not really that. Like what it really is something like the Matrix, is what if everything you believed was a lie, and I think that the fact that they lean so heavily on that makes the video game aspect of it more palatable, because like we're not meant to think the video game is the coolest thing in the world. Instead,
no, we don't care about the video game part,
and if this was like just a video game, I would have dropped the show.
Instead, like we are meant to think the video game is what it is, which is like this horrible kind of like travesty of an illusion. And I think that. And that's one of the reasons why, like, moving on to episode 6 as well, like, I think the, like, abrupt shift in style between the quote-unquote game and the real world has been, like, very controversial, but I think it works perfectly because I think it's a deliberate stylistic dissonance, everything looks so weird and so detached because, like, it's meant to emphasize the idea that, like, in many ways the game is more real than the real world, and I think that it does a really good job of like telling that in a visual language.
And then with like episode 6, like, y'all thought this show wouldn't go hard against mega capitalism, but boy, that episode has some things to say about for-profit prisons.
Off to the shit mines.
Yes, off to the literal shit mines. To mine the shit. And they are then implying they feed to the prisoners to create a like a closed loop.
Yeah. God.
I mean, it's literally a Sisyphean thing, right? Like.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I'll let you guys talk about episode 6. Like, what is it about episode 6 that you guys thought was particularly? Because like you guys were raving about this.
For me, at least, it's the fact that. Like, it's the fulfillment of a lot of the things we saw early in the show, which is what if we took this ridiculous art style and then like told a deadly serious story through it, and like again, like the dissonance makes it so interesting because you've got this incredibly wacky art style, which is like terrific, but in a very different way than you would normally expect from the kind of story they're telling.
Pillman with jetpack versus Hulk with Mega Buster.
Right, and like to that point, it's like even the animation in this episode itself, like as I was telling Eero, almost felt like halfway towards a Trigger-directed like anime with like just like these absurd like squash and stretch distortions of the characters, the weird like background bits, the them going to the den of like the illegal prison gang and like getting surrounded by all these fucking like the bad programs will all look fucking ridiculous. You know, shoutouts to the one with the boomerang head and the shark-faced grin. That one's my favorite. Like, you know, just... And it works super well, right? Because, yeah, it is absurd. It is ridiculous. And so that aspect of it works even just purely as comedy. But it is comedy in the purpose of, like, really laying bare how monstrous the system is.
I mean,
right?
I think that one of the things which, to my mind, at least anime struggles with is comedy drama, you know, or dramedy, the combination of the two things. And I think part of that, at least, is because, obviously, there is some dissonance between our views and Japanese views on how exactly comedy works. But I think this is a really good example of, like, black comedy making everything hit much harder, because, like, everything is so weird and bizarre, but they're still making such serious points underneath it that the absurdity of the situation kind of only, like, deepens the impact of what they're trying to say.
I mean, like, the very premise of, like, we anally probe our prisoners and then send them to the shit mines to mine for shit, and then we feed them that shit. Like, if you do that with, like, realistic human beings in a realistic style, that is a horrific dystopia, right? It is a damning indictment of the for-profit prison system. And, you know, I mean, again, it is Japanese work, so maybe I'm taking, you know, my own American perspective on this, but, like, you know, I think it speaks to, like, the things the show has to say, at least, you know, if not about the specter of capitalism itself, then at least, you know, unchecked, like, I don't know.
There's definitely big corporation exploiting people.
Yeah.
Is, if you want to even take it to the most basic, like, level of what the show is saying, it's definitely in there.
And yeah, maybe it is, like, as to Zig said, maybe it can get away with that because the visual style, the aesthetic is so goofy that it helps make it, I guess, more palatable, maybe is a way to put it.
I mean, I think that's true, but also I think there's something to be said simply for the, like, without wishing to be reductive, the surrealism as for surrealism's sake, you know, like the fact that these clashing aesthetics do just heighten the sort of complete insanity of the situation is an aesthetic choice unto itself, and I think it's an incredibly effective one, you know, just to turn the whole thing into this kind of, like, bizarre dream off the wall thing. And and I think that is, like, an incredibly unusual thing. Like, we don't often see that kind of thing outside of, like, specifically anime you would describe as art house, say, and like, to see it here in what is, you know, also a very well put together action adventure show is refreshing and interesting, you know.
Yeah. I guess I don't want to talk all over you, Jel, because I think three of us here are really into it, but I am curious, just like, is it just that is it just the premise of the robot people that's not working as well for you, or, like?
Yeah, so I'll try and explain.
Yeah.
And I kind of touched on this a little bit when the twist was first revealed, but so I don't have a problem with the art style. I think that's actually kind of cool. I don't have a problem thematically where they're going with it, and some of the twists are kind of interesting, like where we end up at the end of the episode where Kabaragi's not going to log back in with a different body now, right? Which is, I think that's a really cool
I really love that
spin
part.
on how where we're going. I guess my take, the simplest way I can put it is every minute we're actually in the, I guess, real world or cyborg world, or whatever we want to call it, I just want to log back into DECA-DENCE. I like the concept of it existing as sort of like a background thing looming over what's going on, but, like, yeah, it's gonna be an unpopular opinion, but
there's, like, too much.
Yeah, like, it's gonna be an unpopular opinion, but I felt like that whole gang fight thing was a complete waste of time.
I think it's definitely filler, like, in the most literal sense of the word.
I feel like I wanted him to get back into DECA-DENCE by, like, the midpoint of the episode or something, as opposed to, you know, spending a lot of time with the, you know, actual details of what's happening there. But, like, conceptually, I think it's a very cool idea that lends a lot of uniqueness and flavor to the show. Because if it was just Decadence, then it would be kind of like it'd be good, but it would be like kind of predictable, right?
Yeah.
But I would prefer to be like there's enough in Decadence, enough characters, enough things going on that I would prefer to stay focused on that.
Hearing you talk about this, Joe, I guess now that you say it, I guess in my mind, I think maybe the Decadence might actually even need a little bit more screen time, because I feel like other than Natsume, the rest of the Decadence isn't actually that super fleshed out when you think about it.
Like she's got a whole crew there that we saw like once.
Yeah, they're just NPCs, man.
Right, but the whole point is that they're not just NPCs, right? Like that's like the whole message, right? So, so yeah, while like I guess in a bubble the gang fight thing was fun, like I felt like it was a waste of time in a show that only has 12 episodes.
Fair enough.
we got a lot of. We still have to attack and dethrone God here. We got a lot of ground to cover.
Can I offer kind of a partial rebuttal to that?
Sure.
I think that part of the reason they did an episode entirely set in the real world is, well, I think there's two reasons. One is to break the cycle of the episodes that are it's mostly Decadence and then here's a little real world stuff as well. I think it's to take you out of that story, to tell and to show you that the consequences for Kaburagi are very real and very detached from his life in the game. And I also think it's to shake the audience up a bit, to say that, because obviously, the show has had a certain rhythm up until this point, which is the vast majority of the stuff we care about has been happening in Decadence. And obviously, I think that a good show generally keeps people thinking and on their toes. And so I don't think that this will happen again. I think the vast majority of the subsequent episodes will go back to being in Decadence, but I think as a stylistic choice it's important and it works well as like a one-off disruption.
How long until Natsume meets like pill form Kaburagi?
So I actually want to say I'm actually really looking forward to that moment, because I don't know if you guys remember, but in episode 1, and I don't think any of us realized this at the time.
They were looking at the logo or whatever.
Well, not only that, but Natsume's dad, what he discovers is the ruins of one of those old pill robots.
Oh, is it? Okay.
And it is shaded and drawn in the realistic, or relatively more realistic Decadence art style. Like, go back to episode 1 and go to the beginning with the prologue with Natsume's dad, and what he finds there in the rubble is one of those pill robots, like the corpse of one.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're totally right.
And
I just pulled it up.
Yeah, and again, it's like none of us internalized that, because at the time that was like an irrelevant detail that we didn't know was actually super important. But now looking back at that and seeing how the way that pill robot is drawn, I'm almost like, oh, what if when the two finally meet, Natsume doesn't see the goofy pop art version of the pill robots that we see. She sees realistically drawn, physical pill robot. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I'm really curious what they're gonna do when that I think inevitably happens.
That would be pretty cool, and the show does have a tendency to crowd please.
I did like the basically unspoken implication that, because when everyone else is like, why you want to talk to a tanker? Are you sure? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Natsume is just Kaburagi's 2D waifu in the video game.
Yeah, to the perspective of the gears, it's
right.
I gotta log in to see my favorite NPC, man.
Oh man,
She's so spunky.
Characters.
She inspired me.
We got 2 characters this season with AI waifu, in-game waifus.
Yeah, I do think we're still gonna get episodes entirely in the real world.
Okay, we'll see.
Because the it's a pretty tenuous arrangement that Kaburagi currently has to get into Decadence. That's going to become a problem again at some point.
Yeah, I do.
That's
going
to have to get dealt with. I
think there will be some real world content. I just don't think that we'll get a full episode like this.
Yeah, I just would prefer that it's not this episode we're in DECA-DENCE. This episode we're in the real world, and back and the back and forth.
I mean, I'll point out that even in
but-
this episode, we did have a very brief journey into DECA-DENCE in the middle. Yeah,
right. But for the most part, it was
Yeah,
the
where
majority of
Natsume
it
seems to be
was-
handling Kabu's absence surprisingly well, which...
Yeah. Well, I mean, they don't. Did they know? I forgot if they found his body.
I mean, they
or
didn't
if they-
because his body was picked up
Right.
and
Yeah. So that
by Kamina Glasses guy. So
as far as she
Yeah,
knows, he's
he's
just
just
like missing at this
yeah.
point, right? So, but yeah, I mean, putting my, I wasn't meaning to deflate your guys' enthusiasm.
No.
I'm still
I
very
totally
much
wanted
enjoying.
to- yeah.
I'm still very much enjoying the show. I just was
Yeah.
not, jumping off a cliff on this.
No, that's
episode.
cool. I was
So-
just curious. I just wanted to get your
Yeah.
take on it. I will say one last thing. Shout-outs to, yes, when they log into the equivalent of the prison laptop, and they log into the DECA-DENCE title screen, and then it, like, glitches into the, like... I don't know, illegal,
Yeah.
like, cracked version of DECA-DENCE. That's, like, black and white.
I
Like,
yeah.
distorted
I feel
text.
like they've done a pretty good job of like making the show's iconography the game's iconography, and vice versa. If that makes
Right,
sense.
right. It's like the same
Yeah.
logo from the OP
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
it
Like,
was.
it's-
I thought that was an extremely good touch.
Yeah, that's pretty good. They got their hacks running on it, but yeah, no, I mean, it's a good show. I'm enjoying it, and I am looking forward to seeing how they unravel all this in the remaining time that we have. I mean, it was a good. I mean, we're halfway. It was a good midpoint, I think, stopping point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
good act break for that. So, all right. Do you guys want to share a few words on Kamen Rider before we wrap up?
I will quickly. It's
Since we have Zigon and Zigoniro
Yeah.
both. So.
like we're very close to the end now. We're about three or a couple of episodes from the end now, and I think that like ultimately Zero-One has been like it's been a very bitty show, which is somewhat understandable given the troubled production, what with the COVID and everything like that, obviously. But I think that they've done a good job of putting it together, and like there's the sense a little bit at the end that it's kind of falling apart at the seams, which is not super uncommon with shows like this, because 50 episodes is a long way to stretch a show. But I think for the most part, we'll remember this one as a good one, which I think is a notable achievement given how
Is Sentai currently bad?
It's
fine.
fine. It's fine.
Okay, I was just wondering if the old rule still applies that
I mean, like,
only one of the two is ever allowed to be good at once.
We'll see what Kamen Rider Saber is like.
yeah, but like Sentai is profoundly average. It's one of the most average
Okay.
shows I've seen in a while, which is fine.
wondering.
But I think Kamen Rider has had some interesting ideas. They haven't always landed those ideas, but I'm pleased that they've gone for them nevertheless. And I will. I'll have more to say next time when the show is complete.
I mean, did they stick with the whole benevolent CEO thing? Wasn't that the?
I mean, CEO Wars has kind of taken a back seat for some of the back half of the show.
Okay.
But the bad
They still have-
the bad CEO. He was really only bad because when he was a kid, his dad took away his IBO because he got 99 instead of 100 on a test, and he was like, "No, I miss my IBO," and he's like, "Then truly nothing in this world matters other than perfection." And after talking with Amazon Alexa for a few minutes, he remembered that all he really wanted was his IBO.
And then the satellite rebuilt his IBO as a brand new IBO.
And the satellite 3D prints the new model IBO for him, and he's like, "My IBO, truly, this was what I was missing all along. I'm good."
You might think we're being sarcastic, but no, this is pretty much like
No,
a
no,
100%.
no. I don't doubt this in the slightest. As someone who's only like maybe watched a cumulative like 2 hours of Kamen Rider in my life, this all tracks.
I mean, so
pretty good.
and now he keeps hanging out with his little IBO, and he's like, "I'm good now, right?" And other characters are like, "This is all your fault, asshole."
Yeah, you programmed.
literally the potential extinction of humanity we're facing is because of you!
Yeah, you programmed
Stop playing with your eyebow!
You programmed the killer satellite which is trying to wipe out all of humanity. So, like... But...
Maybe do something else.
Is the
play with your eyebow.
Is the Aibo part of their party now?
Unfortunately,
Yeah, totally.
it has not shown up for the past couple of episodes, which has very much led to the Poochie question of us just going whenever it's not on screen, where is the Aibo? But, you know, I think that, like, it's part of what I was saying about how the show is kind of a mess, but it's trying for a lot. Like, you know, there's been a lot of stuff about, you know, obviously the big thing has been AI and whether AI can be used for good and evil and that kind of thing. Free will and fate, you know, the CEO stuff is like, you know, the responsibility of business running and stuff like that. I will say it's still a Japanese show, so there is certainly no, CEOs are straight up evil stuff in it. Like,
right.
because,
I mean, that and being a kid's show,
Yeah.
right? Like, I think for better or worse, you're not, you know, going from DECA-DENCE to this, we are not going to get our our scathing indictment of capitalism
But yeah, like,
in Kamen Rider.
like one of the things you like that it hasn't done so well is that, like, it's posed a lot of questions, but it hasn't necessarily given coherent answers for a lot of the questions it's posing.
Do appreciate how some of the villains have been handled over time, especially certain villains who have helped the protagonists fight other villains, etc. But are still villains. Like, their motivation, this guy's motivation to kill all humans has remained the whole time, and occasionally that coincides with fighting the bigger bad, but he still wants to kill all humans.
What do the bigger bads want to do that is worse than kill all
kill all
humans?
humans and kill all robots?
Oh shit.
And he's like,
right,
alright,
well.
well, I don't like humans, but I gotta make sure Humagears are still alive.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
But once we kill this guy, I'm gonna go right back to killing all humans.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Jesus.
it's not such a big secret that the villains are always the best part of any Kamen Rider show, and I think that, you know, the set that we have had this time have been gratifyingly complex.
Right, and I
interesting.
mean, Jin at the start of the show was like a psycho child with a gun, basically, and has slowly become potentially the most interesting character.
Yeah, I mean, like, that they've done a really good job of, like, developing those characters while, as Iroh said, keeping their motivations consistent and believable.
Right.
And
not just flipping
No,
the good
absolutely
guys
not.
with the power
well,
of
except
friendship,
for the
right?
Aibo, but, you know.
Well, yes, but it's
Yes.
an Aibo. So,
But yes, I think, you know, like I said, I think that they have become a little ragged towards the end here, but
Yeah.
I think a lot will depend on where ultimately they decide to finish it up. And I think it still has the potential to have a really strong finish. I think also the finish could be a bit of a wet fart. So
I mean, I assume it will be the power of friendship allows us to overcome the final boss.
I mean, quite possibly, but we'll have to see. I mean, they did in the last episode just make the main character a bad guy, which is an interesting choice this close to the end of the show.
I mean, you got possessed, basically.
I mean, look,
That's not really becoming a bad guy.
he was
then.
consumed by an overwhelming desire for revenge, so, like, it's kind of 50-50.
He'll get fixed by the finale,
Probably
right?
probably
Like,
yes,
that's how
but,
it always
but it was
goes.
still an interesting twist, which we didn't necessarily see coming.
Right, it's like the villain realizing that the main character's power up is too strong for him to defeat, decides instead to possess the main character, to use that power for his own ends.
Yes.
All right.
But yeah, you know, like I said, we'll probably have more to say about it next time when it is finished.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So next time we will set aside time for some final thoughts on that. And that's going to wrap up this episode. So we'll go to our housekeeping. Check us out at theglorioblog.com. You can follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube. You know, leave us a 5-star review, like, comment, subscribe, smash that like button bell thing. I'm old, guys. I'm sorry.
Do the thing.
You know, tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll catch everybody next time.
ちに繰り